firstly in Action, Councillor Montford, and the Mayoress Mrs. Maggie. The Right Worshipful Mayor of Telford, Region, Councillor Miles Austin, and the Mayoress Mrs. George. President of the Institution of Civil Engineers, George Grocott, Telford. Chairman of the County Council, Councillor Brian Yellow, and other distinguished guests. On behalf of the Institution of Civil Engineers, I welcome you to Montford Bridge for a very special event, a very special day, and a very special year. We've even got some very special weather to go with it. A special year because we're celebrating the anniversary of Thomas Telford, famed stonemason, revered architect and civil engineer. And we've been doing so with talks, tours, visits, exhibitions, plays, conferences and events such as those today. A special day because he was born exactly 250 years ago on the 9th of August 1757 in the village of Westerker in southern Scotland. And why Montford Bridge? Well, this is the first major bridge to be built by Telford, or to be built Telford's own designs, shortly after he was appointed County Surveyor of Shropshire in 1787, and where he first embarked on his career as a civil engineer. He was to build over 1,000 bridges and aqueducts. Now, when I first took up my role as chairman of the IC in the West Midlands, I must admit I knew relatively little about Telford and his works. And then my bridge, the Montford the aqueduct, and his involvement with the Institution of Civil Engineers. As the year has progressed, I've begun to realise just how prolific he was, how advanced his ideas and techniques. And it was only after visiting some of his works in this area that I realised how fortunate we are in the Shropshire and West Midlands area in the number of examples of his works that survive. Still, many of those are in use today. From great canals, roads, bridges, churches and public buildings. And he still had time to be the first president of the Institution of Civil Engineers and pass on his learning, knowledge and experiences to others who would continue his legacy. So I ask today's president to unveil the plaque. There are just a couple of acknowledgements I must make. Firstly, to Shropshire County Council, and particularly to John Williams, for getting us the planning permission, and also for agreeing to erect the plaque, which will be over on the far side of the bridge. Secondly, to the ICE staff who have been involved in organising today's events, the Telford Working Group, due to the regional support team. I'm not going to name them all, but there is one that I must single out. Roger Cragg, a long-standing committee member, has been on for over 25 years, and he has been the backbone of our Thomas Telford celebrations in the West Midlands, talks, visits, and in particular today's event. Indeed, not only has he agreed the wording of the plaque and its format, he's also coordinated with the supplier, he's coordinated with the planning side in the County Council, but he's also donated the plaque. So a really big thank you from me, and I think a big round of applause for acknowledgement. So without more ado, I'd like to hand over to Professor President of the Institution of Civil Engineers to unveil the plaque.
Thank you very much, Ed. The Right Worshipful Mayor of Shrewsbury in Action, Councillor John Cook, the Mayoress Mrs. Margaret Cook, the Right Worshipful Mayor of Telford, Councillor Miles Austin, and the Mayoress. Rocott from Telford, first chairman, Shropshire County Council, right below. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I too first would like to add my personal thanks and the thanks of the institution to Roger particularly, and also to the County Council. It's actually fantastic to use this mechanism to recognise and celebrate the excellence of Thomas Telford. As the 142nd President of the institution, I'm very proud indeed to follow in the footsteps of Thomas Telford. I'm really pleased to be here today to celebrate with you his 250th birthday. The institution was the first engineering institution in the world. It was founded by a group of 8 young people, young enthusiasts, just meeting in a coffee shop to discuss engineering problems, to exchange best practice, and to improve the engineering knowledge today. And they felt very much then that they were doing that to serve society. And at his very first meeting, as President, Telford gave an address to describe the opportunity of the institution. He established the tone of the institution's code of conduct and its admissions policy. And his views still remain very relevant today. Bequests by Telford, coupled with his esteemed reputation, allowed the institution to prosper, taking its place amongst the leading learned societies, becoming the representative body of engineering at that time in all its forms. Telford took the institution really from quite small beginnings, with only the 16th person to join, to the foundations of the great institution that it has become. We now have almost 80,000 members in 150 countries throughout the world. Unlike presidents of today, who hold office just for 1 year, he was re-elected every year from 1820 until his death in 1834. When he died, he was buried in Westminster Abbey, reflecting his status at the time. He really was an eminent engineer and an eminent individual of his day. How fantastic it is that he's been so well recognised in Shropshire with the naming of Telford, the town. I think it is absolutely brilliant. Over the past months, like Ed, I've learned a great deal more about this great man, and I've become very, very impressed by all his achievements. I've also grown to understand him a bit more. I'm actually in awe of this great engineer, and I know, talking to others, that very many of them feel very much the same. He was the civil engineer of his day. He built the last, he was innovative in design, he was prudent in his use of materials, and I think probably most important of all, he trained, he mentored, and he developed and supervised others. It was that enabled him to deliver the huge amount of projects that he delivered. He did it all in a way that maintained the standards of quality for which I think particularly he was recognised. And in a recent special edition of the institution's Civil Engineering Journal, I've seen one floating around this morning, he's actually been credited by a very senior person in project management in the UK as one of the best project managers of his time, noting particularly that he inspired all of those who worked with him. It's just a fantastic skill to be able to do. In his approach to projects, Telford was very thorough in preparing specifications and contracts. He recognised, as we do now, the value of long-term relationships and the essential aspect of assembling good teams together with mutual respect and a good track record of collaborating with each other. In Telford's own words, according to the philosophy of his design, he always had the ideal solution. It was always, in his view, technically correct and visually appealing. And who could argue with that assessment? Telford's creations were far superior to the many designs of the day, and the designs of engineers who followed him over the next 40 or 50 years, and even perhaps today. Of course, the Montford Bridge that we see here today was completed in 1792. Telford's first bridge, completed on time, as all good projects are. What we see is not quite the original bridge. It's had some modifications designed for modern traffic. It's remarkable